They called him the Ghost of Gangnam, the most feared crime lord in Seoul. A man who built an empire on blood, secrets, and one unbreakable rule: no maid stays longer than 30 days. 27 women in 3 years. Some quit in terror. Some walked out in the middle of the night. And some simply vanished. No one knew why. No one dared to ask. Until her. She was supposed to be just another temporary worker. A foreigner. Invisible. Forgotten by day 31. But on day 18 she made one mistake. One wrong text message sent to the wrong number. And in that single moment, everything changed. What happened next would expose buried secrets, trigger a war between criminal families, and force the most dangerous man in Korea to choose between the empire he built and the one person who made him want to be human again. This is the story of how love became the most dangerous weapon of all. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. 40 stories above the city, in a fortress of steel and glass, lived a man whose name was whispered in fear across every underground gambling den, every backroom deal, every shadow where Seoul's criminal underbelly breathed. Kang Min-jun, the Ghost of Gangnam. To the world he was a legitimate businessman, real estate mogul, tech investor, philanthropist. But behind the tailored Tom Ford suits and the cold, aristocratic face that graced Forbes' Korea, Min-jun controlled one of the most powerful crime syndicates in Asia. Drug routes from Busan to Tokyo. Gambling empires that stretched into Macau. Cybercrime networks that could topple governments. He was 34 years old. He had never lost. And he trusted no one. Especially not the people who entered his home. The mansion in Pyeongchang-dong was a monument to paranoia. Bulletproof windows. Biometric locks. Security cameras in every hallway. And a single, unbreakable rule: no maid stays longer than 30 days. In his study, dark wood, leather, the scent of expensive whiskey and old books, Min-jun sat reviewing surveillance footage on 3 monitors. His second-in-command, Park Jae-sung, stood by the door, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "The new one starts tomorrow," Jae-sung said. His voice was gravelly, scarred from a knife fight years ago. Min-jun didn't look up. Background check. Clean. Foreign national. Work visa sponsored by the agency. No criminal record. Debt back home, family situation. She needs the money. Perfect. Min-jun's voice was ice. The desperate ones don't ask questions. Jae-sung hesitated. "Hyung-nim, this is the 28th. I know how to count." Silence filled the room like a held breath. "Day 30, Min-jun said softly, still staring at the screens. "Mark it on the calendar." Across the city, in a cramped studio apartment in Itaewon where the rent devoured most of her paycheck, Amara Williams sat on the floor, staring at her phone. 23 years old. 5'6". Dark brown skin that made her stand out in a country where she was often the only black woman in the room. Hair pulled back in a simple bun. Eyes that held both exhaustion and determination. The video call connected. "Amara. Baby, we got your transfer." Her mother's face filled the screen, warm, loving, lined with years of struggle. Behind her, Amara could see the small living room of their home in Atlanta. Her younger brother, Marcus, waved from the couch. "Hey, Mama." Amara forced a smile, though her body ached from 2 shifts at the convenience store. "How's Marcus's treatment going?" "Good, baby. The doctors say 2 more rounds of chemo, then we reassess." "Your money." "Amara, you're saving his life." Tears burned behind Amara's eyes. She blinked them back. "That's all that matters. You okay over there? You eating enough? Are people treating you right?" "I'm fine, Mama. I promise." It was a lie, but a necessary one. The truth was, Seoul was beautiful and brutal. She loved the food, the energy, the neon-soaked nights, and the way history and modernity collided on every street corner. But she was always aware of the stares. The way some people touched their hair when she passed. The way taxi drivers sometimes didn't stop. The way her Korean, though improving, marked her as forever foreign. She had friends, other foreign workers, a tight-knit community of outsiders surviving together. But loneliness was a constant companion. And now she'd taken a job that paid 3 times her normal wage. "Too good to be true," the voice in her head whispered. After the call ended, her phone buzzed. A text from Chloe, her closest friend, a British teacher working in Gangnam. "Seoul, girl, you sure about this job? I googled that address. That's serious money neighborhood. What kind of businessman needs a live-in maid for only 30 days? Amara, the kind who pays enough to cover Marcus's treatment. I don't have a choice. Seoul, just be careful. If anything feels wrong, you call me." I don't care what time. Amara, I will. Promise. But as Amara packed her small bag that night, a knot of dread tightened in her stomach. She had no idea she was walking into a cage. And the man who built it was about to meet the one person who refused to be afraid. The mansion rose from the hillside like a fortress carved from glass and stone. Modern architecture met traditional Korean elements, curved rooflines, stone walls, gardens manicured to mathematical perfection. The gate alone probably cost more than Amara's entire education. A black Mercedes waited at the entrance. The driver, silent, expressionless, took her bag and opened the door. No greeting. No eye contact. The ride through the estate grounds took 5 minutes. Amara pressed her hand against the cool window, watching armed security patrol the perimeter. Cameras tracked their movement. What have I gotten myself into? The car stopped at the main entrance. The driver opened her door and pointed toward the massive front door without a word. Amara stepped out, her breath visible in the October cold. The door opened before she could knock. Park Jae-sung stood in the entrance, tall, broad-shouldered, face like carved granite. A scar ran from his left eyebrow to his jaw. He wore a black suit that couldn't quite hide the gun holstered at his hip. "You're early," he said in Korean. I'm sorry Amara stammered, her formal Korean clumsy on her tongue. "English is fine." Jae-sung's English was perfect, barely accented. "Come." She followed him inside. The interior stole her breath. Marble floors. A floating staircase that seemed to defy gravity. Art that belonged in museums. Everything was pristine, cold, untouched, like a house where no one actually lived. "Rules?" Jae-sung said, stopping in the main hallway. He handed her a tablet. "Read. Memorize. Do not break them." Amara took the tablet, her hands trembling slightly. House rules. 1. You will clean and maintain all designated areas according to the attached schedule. 2. You will prepare meals as instructed. Dietary restrictions and preferences are listed. 3. You do not enter the master bedroom, the study, or the basement. Ever. 4. You do not answer the door or the phone. 5. You do not ask questions about Mr. Kang's business or personal life. 6. You do not bring guests to the property. 7. You do not leave the property without permission. 8. You will remain invisible. If Mr. Kang is in a room, you leave unless instructed otherwise. 9. Your employment is exactly 30 days. Not 1 day more. 10. Violation of any rule results in immediate termination. Amara's mouth went dry. This is very detailed. Mr. Kang values privacy and order above all else. Jae-sung's eyes were unreadable. If you cannot follow these rules, leave now. The agency will send someone else. Amara thought of Marcus. The hospital bills. Her mother's desperate voice. I can follow the rules. Good. Jae-sung pointed down a hallway. Your quarters? Unpack. Work begins at 6 a.m. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. Mr. Kang does not tolerate failure. The last maid lasted 12 days. The one before that 23. They all thought they could handle it. What happened to them? Jae-sung's smile didn't reach his eyes. They quit. The word hung in the air like a threat. But Jae-sung had lied. Not all of them quit. Some disappeared. And the reason why was buried so deep even Minjun had almost forgotten the truth. Amara barely slept that first night. Her room was small but comfortable, far nicer than her studio apartment. Private bathroom. Clean sheets. A window overlooking the garden. But the silence was oppressive. No city sounds, no neighbors, no life. Just the hum of climate control and her own racing heartbeat. At 5:45 a.m., she woke, showered, and dressed in the uniform that had been left folded on a chair. Simple black dress, white apron, comfortable shoes. She braided her hair tightly and stared at herself in the mirror. You can do this. 30 days. That's it. The kitchen was enormous. Professional-grade appliances, 2 refrigerators, marble countertops that gleamed under recessed lighting. A detailed schedule was taped to the counter. 6 a.m., prepare breakfast. Black coffee, specific bean blend in canister A. Grilled mackerel, rice, mayakguk, seaweed soup, 3 banchan, side dishes. Serve in dining room at 7 a.m. sharp. Amara had learned to cook Korean food from YouTube and her Korean language exchange partner. She wasn't an expert, but she could manage the basics. She worked quickly, hands steady despite her nerves. At exactly 7 a.m., she carried the tray to the dining room. And that's when she saw him. Kang Minjun sat at the head of a long glass table, reading something on his tablet. He didn't look up when she entered. Amara's breath caught. He was beautiful. Sharp jaw, high cheekbones, dark eyes that could cut through steel. His black hair was styled back, still slightly damp from a shower. He wore a black shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms marked with faint scars she tried not to stare at. But it was his presence that hit her like a physical force. Cold, controlled, dangerous. She set the tray down silently, hands shaking. "Coffee's too hot," he said without looking up. His voice was deep, smooth, empty of emotion. "I don't drink boiling water." I'm sorry, I'll leave it." Amara stood frozen. "That means leave the room," Minjun said, still not looking at her. She fled. She didn't know it yet, but he'd already noticed everything. The slight tremble in her hands. The careful way she moved. The fact that she didn't flinch when he spoke. Most people did. And most importantly, the way she looked at him. Not with fear. Not with worship. But with something he hadn't seen in years. Curiosity. The days blurred together. Amara woke at dawn. Cleaned rooms that didn't need cleaning. Prepared meals that were eaten in silence. Washed dishes, folded laundry, polished surfaces until they gleamed. And she remained invisible. Minjun passed her in hallways without acknowledgement. He left for work, if that's what it was, and returned at strange hours. Sometimes early evening. Sometimes 4 in the morning. Once, she heard shouting from the study, followed by a gunshot that made her drop the vacuum cleaner she'd been using 2 floors away. No one came to explain. The house absorbed the violence like it absorbed everything else. She saw things she wasn't supposed to see. Men in expensive suits arriving late at night, their faces hard with the particular kind of tension that came from lives lived on the edge of legality. Blood on bathroom tile that she was instructed to clean without question. A black duffel bag left in the foyer that she knew, contained either weapons or money. She kept her head down. Did her job. Sent money home. But isolation gnawed at her. The only person she interacted with was Jae-sung, who delivered instructions with military precision and watched her with eyes that missed nothing. Sometimes she caught him studying her as if trying to solve an equation. "You're different from the others," he said one morning, appearing in the kitchen while she was preparing lunch. Amara tensed. "How? You don't cry. You don't complain. You don't ask questions. Would it matter if I did?" A ghost of a smile. "No. Then why waste the energy?" Jae-sung nodded slowly as if she'd passed some kind of test. Day 9. "You're doing better than most." But on day 10, everything changed. It was late, nearly midnight. Amara had finished her work and retreated to her room, exhausted. She sat on her bed, texting Chloe. "Amara, I feel like I'm living in a museum. Or a mausoleum. Can't tell which. Chloe, that bad? What's the boss like? Amara, imagine if someone carved a man out of ice and taught him to wear Armani. Chloe, oh. But is he hot though? Amara, Chloe, I swear to God, Seoul, you didn't say no." Amara shook her head, smiling despite herself. The truth was complicated. Yes, Minjun was objectively attractive. But he was also terrifying. The kind of man who could destroy your life with a phone call. The kind of man who probably had. Amara, hot or not doesn't matter when someone looks at you like your furniture. Sitoi, oof. That bad? Amara, he's spoken maybe 10 words to me in 10 days. And half of those were criticisms. Sitoi, classic emotionally unavailable rich guy. Have you tried talking to him? Amara, that's literally against the rules. I'm supposed to be invisible. Sitoi sounds lonely. For both of you. Amara stared at that message. For both of you. She thought about the way Minjun moved through his enormous house like a ghost. How she'd never seen him smile. How sometimes, late at night, she heard music coming from somewhere deep in the mansion. Classical piano played with a melancholy that made her chest ache. He was powerful. Fear. Obeyed without question. And he was utterly, devastatingly alone. Amara, yeah, maybe. But before she could continue the conversation, she heard footsteps in the hallway outside her room. She froze. The footsteps stopped outside her door. A long silence. Then they moved on. Amara's heart hammered. She waited 5 minutes, then quietly opened her door and peered out. The hallway was empty. But on the floor just outside her door, someone had left something. A book. She picked it up carefully. It was old, well-worn, the cover embossed with Korean characters she couldn't read. She opened it to the first page. A handwritten note in English. "You noticed the piano. Most people don't hear it over their own fear." That was the moment the ice began to crack. And neither of them knew how to stop what was coming next. Amara stared at the book for hours that night, unable to sleep. It was a collection of Korean poetry, classical sijō and modern verses, beautifully illustrated. The kind of book someone treasured. And Minjun had left it outside her door. What? The note said she'd noticed the piano. She'd heard him playing late at night, hauntingly beautiful melodies that drifted through the mansion like smoke. She'd stood in the hallway once, just listening, until Jae-sung had appeared from nowhere and silently escorted her back to her room. But she'd never mentioned it to anyone. Which meant Minjun had been watching her more closely than she realized. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she felt something else. Something dangerous. Interest. In the world Minjun inhabited, information was currency and observation was survival. He'd built his empire on reading people, predicting their moves, staying 3 steps ahead. But the maid was becoming a problem. Not because she broke rules, she didn't, but because she saw things. And worse, she made him want to be seen. 3 days later, Amara made a decision. It was reckless, possibly stupid. But the isolation was crushing her, and the book had cracked open something she couldn't ignore. She found Minjun in the library, a room she was technically allowed to clean though he was rarely there. He sat in a leather chair by the window, reading, a glass of whiskey on the side table. Amara stood in the doorway, her heart racing. "Mr. Kong?" He looked up slowly. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise maybe. Or annoyance. "I didn't ask you to clean this room today." "I know." Amara stepped inside holding the book. "I wanted to return this. And, thank you." Minjun's gaze dropped to the book, then back to her face. "You read it?" "Some of it. My Korean isn't good enough for all the classical pieces, but the modern ones." She hesitated. "They're beautiful. Sad but beautiful." Silence stretched between them. "You should go," Minjun said finally. "Why do you play piano at 3 in the morning?" The question left her mouth before she could stop it. Minjun's eyes went cold. "That's not your concern." "You're right. I'm sorry." Amara set the book on a nearby table. "But, for what it's worth, whoever taught you was incredibly talented. The way you play Chopin, it's like the music is breaking and healing at the same time." She turned to leave. "My mother." Amara stopped. Minjun's voice was quiet, almost inaudible. "She taught me. Before she died." Amara turned back slowly. Minjun was staring out the window, his profile sharp against the afternoon light. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "Don't be. It was a long time ago." His voice had returned to its usual ice. "Leave." This time Amara obeyed. But as she walked away she heard him add almost to himself, "Day 13. You're lasting longer than most." It was the first crack in his armor. And both of them knew it. Amara began to notice more. The mansion had rhythms, patterns. Deliveries came on Tuesdays and Fridays, but never through the front gate. Men arrived after dark, always in black cars with tinted windows, always carrying briefcases or duffel bags. Jae-sung was always present for these meetings. And Minjun would disappear into the study for hours. Once, Amara was bringing fresh towels to the second-floor bathroom when she heard voices from the study below, angry, escalating. She shouldn't have stopped. Shouldn't have listened. But she did. "Pressure from the Kobe family," a voice said in Korean. "They want answers about the shipment. Tell them to be patient." That was Minjun, cold and final. "They're not patient men, Hyungnim. If we don't deliver, then we'll deal with it. I don't take orders from the Yakuza." Pause. Then another voice. "What about the girl?" Amara's blood ran cold. "What about her?" Minjun's voice had dropped to something dangerous. "Day 14. She's been here longer than the others. People are asking questions. The security team thinks, I don't care what the security team thinks. She follows the rules. She does her job. That's the end of the discussion. With respect, Hyungnim, she's a foreign national. If something happens, nothing will happen." Minjun's voice was absolute. "Now get out." Footsteps approached the door. Amara fled. She'd heard too much. Seen too much. And the 30-day rule was starting to make terrible sense. Because in Minjun's world, witnesses didn't retire. They disappeared. Day 18 arrived with the first snow of winter. Amara stood at her window watching white flakes drift past the glass. Back home in Atlanta it rarely snowed. Marcus would have loved this. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. "Mama, Marcus's scans came back. Tumor is shrinking. Doctor says he's responding beautifully. Baby, your money is saving his life. I love you so much." Tears blurred Amara's vision. She sank onto her bed, holding the phone like a lifeline. 12 more days. Just 12 more days. She needed to tell someone. Share the good news. Feel less alone. Her fingers moved across the keyboard, typing quickly. Amara, Marcus is getting better. Scans showed the tumor shrinking. I can't believe it. All of this, the isolation, the fear, this impossible job, it's actually working. 12 more days and I'm free. She hit send, then immediately opened her conversation with Chloe to paste the message. And froze. The message hadn't gone to Chloe. It had gone to the last person she'd texted. A number she'd been given for emergencies only. Mr. Kang's personal line. Amara's hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the phone. No. No, 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 no. She stared at the screen, watching the message change from delivered to read. Her career, her brother's treatment, everything she'd worked for, gone. Because of one stupid mistake. The phone buzzed. A new message. From him. Amara couldn't breathe. She opened it. Amar. Kong, who is Marcus? That message changed everything. Because for the first time in 15 years, Kang Minjun had asked a question that wasn't about business. And for the first time since she'd arrived, Amara Williams had a choice. Lie to protect herself or tell the truth and risk everything. Amara stared at the message for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. Her hands trembled. Her mind raced through a dozen responses, a dozen ways to deflect, to apologize, to disappear. But something stopped her. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the memory of Minjun's voice saying my mother taught me. Maybe it was the simple human need to be seen as more than just another interchangeable maid in a mansion full of ghosts. She typed slowly. Amara, my little brother. He's 16. He has leukemia. I'm working here to pay for his treatment. She hit send before she could overthink it. No response. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Amara's stomach twisted. She'd violated Rule 5. You do not ask questions about Mr. Kang's business or personal life. But she hadn't asked, she'd answered. Did that still count as a violation? Her phone buzzed. Amar. Kang, how much longer does he need treatment? Amara's eyes widened. She typed quickly, her heart hammering. Amara, 6 more months minimum. Maybe a year. It depends on how he responds. Another long pause. Amar. Kang, come to the study. Terror flooded through her. This was it. She was being fired. Deported. Possibly worse. The study. The room she was forbidden to enter. Amara stood on shaking legs, straightened her uniform, and walked through the mansion like a woman approaching the gallows. The study door was ajar. Amara knocked softly. Come in. She pushed the door open. The room was darker than she'd imagined. Rich wood paneling, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk with 3 monitors displaying what looked like security feeds and financial data. The scent of leather and whiskey and old paper. Minjun stood by the window, his back to her, hands in his pockets. He wore black slacks and a white shirt, sleeves rolled up. Even from behind, his posture radiated controlled power. Close the door. Amara obeyed, her pulse thundering in her ears. I'm sorry, she said immediately. The text was a mistake. I meant to send it to my friend and, how old were you when he was born? The question caught her off guard. 7. So you helped raise him. It wasn't a question, but Amara answered anyway. My mom worked 2 jobs. I was the oldest. Someone had to look after him. Minjun turned to face her. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes, those cold, dark eyes, held something she couldn't quite identify. And now you're working in a foreign country, in a house you can't leave, for a man you're afraid of, to save his life. I'm not afraid of you. The words left her mouth before her brain could stop them. Minjun's eyebrow lifted fractionally. You should be. Maybe. But I'm more afraid of losing my brother. Silence filled the study like smoke. Minjun walked to his desk, picked up a folder and held it out to her. This is your file. Background check. Financial records. Everything the agency provided. Amara took it with trembling hands. She opened it, saw her own face staring back at her from a photo attached to the first page. Details of her life laid bare. Her debt, her visa, her mother's address in Atlanta. I know everything about you, Minjun said quietly. Your father left when you were 5. Your mother has diabetes. Marcus was diagnosed 2 years ago. You dropped out of university to work. You came to Korea because the pay was better than anything you could find in the States. Amara's throat tightened. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to understand something. Minjun leaned against the desk, arms crossed. Everyone who enters this house is investigated. Everyone is watched. Everyone is categorized as either useful or dangerous. I've survived this long because I trust no one and assume everyone has an agenda. I don't, I know. Minjun's voice softened almost imperceptibly. That's the problem. Amara stared at him. I don't understand. You're here for one reason, your brother? You don't care about my business. You don't care about my money or my connections. You're not trying to steal information or position yourself for leverage. You're just... He paused as if the words were difficult. Trying to survive long enough to save someone you love. Tears pricked Amara's eyes. She blinked them back. That text wasn't a mistake, Minjun continued. You're exhausted. Isolated. And for one moment you forgot to be invisible. You forgot to be afraid. You were just human. He moved closer. Not threatening but deliberate. I haven't seen that in a very long time. Amara's breath caught. Mr. Kong, Minjun? His voice was quiet. When we're alone you can call me Minjun. The intimacy of it struck her like a physical blow. Why? She whispered. Because, Minjun said, his eyes searching hers, I'm tired of being surrounded by people who only see what I can do to them. And you see something else. What do I see? I don't know yet. A ghost of a smile touched his lips, the first real expression she'd seen from him. But I want to find out. It was the most dangerous thing he'd ever said. Because in his world, curiosity was weakness. Interest was vulnerability. And wanting something, someone, beyond the empire he'd built was the first step toward losing everything. After that night everything changed. Not dramatically. Not obviously. But in small, significant ways that Amara felt like electricity on her skin. Minjun started eating breakfast at the same time she served it. He still didn't make conversation but he'd glance at her when she entered and sometimes he'd nod. A tiny acknowledgement that she existed. Once, when she was clearing his dinner plates, he asked, "How's Marcus doing?" Amara almost dropped the plate. "Good. The doctors are hopeful." "Good." Minjun returned to his tablet. But his voice had been gentle. Another time she found a better quality coffee blend in the kitchen with a note. "Try this one. Less bitter." It was unsigned but she knew. Jae-sung noticed too. He cornered her one morning while she was folding laundry. "You're still here," he said, his tone unreadable. "Day 22, Amara replied carefully. "That's 8 days past when most of them quit." Jae-sung studied her with those sharp, calculating eyes. "What are you doing differently?" "I'm just doing my job." "No." Jae-sung stepped closer, his voice dropping. "You're doing something else. And I don't know if it's brilliant or suicidal." "What are you talking about?" "He looks at you." Jae-sung's expression was grave. "Minjun doesn't look at people. He looks through them. But he sees you. And in our world, that's the most dangerous thing that can happen." Amara's heart raced. "I haven't broken any rules. That's not what I'm worried about." Jae-sung shook his head. "The rules exist for a reason. The 30-day limit exists for a reason. And the moment you stay past day 30, you stop being staff. You become something else. Something that can be used against him." "I'm not trying to, I know. That's what makes it worse." Jae-sung's voice was almost kind. "He trusts you. And trust gets people killed in this business." Before Amara could respond, Jae-sung walked away, leaving her alone with the weight of his warning. But the warning came too late. Because Minjun had already made a decision that would change both their lives forever. And the clock was ticking down to day 30. It happened on day 25. Amara couldn't sleep. She'd been awake since 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, thinking about what would happen in 5 days. She'd completed the job. Earned enough to cover the next 3 months of Marcus's treatment. She should have been relieved. Instead she felt hollow. She got up, pulled on a sweater over her pajamas and walked barefoot through the silent mansion. She hadn't planned to go to the music room, the beautiful space on the second floor with the grand piano, but her feet carried her there anyway. The door was open. And Minjun was at the piano. He played Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, slow, melancholic, each note falling like a tear. His eyes were closed, his expression unguarded in a way she'd never seen. Amara stood in the doorway transfixed. When the last note faded, Minjun opened his eyes. "You should be sleeping," he said without turning around. "So should you." Pause. Then, "Come here." Amara hesitated, then walked into the room. Minjun shifted on the piano bench, making space. An invitation. She sat down beside him, careful to maintain distance, though the bench forced them closer than they'd ever been. She could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle. Feel the warmth of his body. Can you play? He asked. No. I always wanted to learn, but there was no money for lessons. Minjun's voice was soft, understanding. Play something for me, Amara said. Something that means something to you. Minjun's hands hovered over the keys. Then he began to play, not Chopin this time but something else. A Korean folk melody, simple and haunting, transformed under his fingers into something transcendent. My mother used to sing this, he said quietly, still playing. Before everything fell apart. Amara didn't speak. She just listened. I was 8 when she died, Minjun continued, his voice barely above a whisper. My father was already deep in the organization. She begged him to leave to give us a normal life. But he was too proud. Too ambitious. And one day his enemies decided the best way to hurt him was to take the thing he loved most. The music shifted, became darker. They killed her in front of me. Made me watch. Made my father watch. And then they let us live, because death would have been mercy. Amara's breath caught. She wanted to touch him, to offer comfort, but she didn't dare. My father changed after that, Minjun said. He became the monster they thought he was. Ruthless. Unstoppable. By the time I was 16, he controlled half of Seoul's underground. And he taught me everything he knew. Where is he now? Dead. Heart attack 5 years ago. Or so the official report says. Minjun's smile was bitter. I took over the empire he built. And I swore I'd never let anyone close enough to be used as a weapon against me. The music stopped. Minjun turned to face her, his eyes intense in the dim light. That's why the 30-day rule exists. That's why no one stays. Because caring about someone in my world is signing their death warrant. Then why am I still here? Amara's voice trembled. Because, Minjun said, his hand moving to cup her face with a gentleness that broke her heart, I'm starting to forget why I made that rule in the first place. They were 3 inches apart. 2 people from different worlds, separated by an ocean of violence and power. And in that moment, they both knew they'd already crossed a line they could never uncross. The next morning, Amara woke to chaos. Shouting. Running footsteps. The sound of cars screeching outside. She threw on clothes and ran into the hallway. Security personnel she'd never seen before were everywhere, armed, moving with military precision. Jae-sung appeared, his face grim. Stay in your room. Lock the door. What's happening? Now. His tone left no room for argument. Amara retreated, but she couldn't lock herself away, not when she could hear Minjun's voice, sharp and commanding, coming from downstairs. She crept to the top of the stairs and listened. Don't care what the Kobe family thinks they're owed, Minjun was saying. That shipment was intercepted by the NIS, not stolen by us. If they want to blame someone, blame their own sloppy security. They don't see it that way, Hyungnim. That was Jae-sung. They're demanding compensation. And they've made threats. Let them threaten. They mentioned the girl. Silence. Amara's blood turned to ice. What did they say? Minjun's voice had dropped to something deadly. That your sudden attachment to staff has made you vulnerable. That she could be leverage. How do they know about her? We're investigating. But Hyungnim, they're right. If you break the 30-day rule, if she stays, she's staying. The declaration rang through the mansion like a gunshot. Minjun, Jae-sung said carefully, you know what that means. She becomes a target. Every enemy you have will use her to get to you. Then we eliminate the enemies. We can't eliminate everyone. And the moment she stays past 30 days, the moment it becomes obvious she means something to you, her life is over. You know this. You made the rule to prevent exactly this situation. Amara pressed her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. I don't care. Minjun's voice was raw with something that sounded almost like desperation. I've spent 15 years being untouchable. Alone. And I'm tired, Jae-sung. I'm so goddamn tired of being the ghost everyone fears and no one knows. Then let her go. Give her the money she needs. Send her home. Let her live. Is that what you'd do? Minjun's voice turned sharp. If it was you? If you finally found someone who looked at you like you were human, not a weapon. A long silence. No, Jae-sung admitted quietly. I'd probably make the same stupid choice. Day 28. 2 days until the rule broke. 2 days until Amara's life was no longer her own. And neither of them knew that the real threat wasn't the Yakuza or the rival families or the enemies Minjun had made. The real threat was already inside the mansion. And it had been there all along. That night, Minjun came to her room. He didn't knock. Just appeared in her doorway like a shadow made flesh. Come with me, he said. Amara followed him through the mansion to a part of the house she'd never seen, down a hidden staircase behind the library, into a basement that looked like it belonged in a different building entirely. Concrete walls. Reinforced doors. A panic room, she realized. A place to hide when the world came calling. But inside it was beautiful. Soft lighting. Comfortable furniture. A wall of screens showing every angle of the property. And in the corner, incongruously, a small kitchen setup and a bed. "This is where I go when I need to think," Minjun said. "No one can reach me here. No surveillance. No interruptions. Why are you showing me this?" Minjun turned to face her. In the soft light he looked younger, more vulnerable. "Because in 2 days you were supposed to leave. Go home. Save your brother and forget this place ever existed." "I know. But I'm going to ask you not to." Amara's heart stopped. "What?" "Stay." Minjun's voice was rough. "Not as a maid. Not as an employee. But as someone who matters to me. As someone I want to protect. As someone I—" He stopped as if the words were too difficult. "You don't even know me," Amara whispered. "I know you're brave enough to travel to a foreign country alone to save your brother. I know you hear music in the middle of the night and don't run away from it. I know you're not afraid of me even though you should be. I know that when you look at me you see Minjun, not the ghost of Gangnam." He stepped closer. "I know that for the first time in 15 years I want someone to stay." Tears blurred Amara's vision. "If I stay, I'm a target." "Yes." "If I stay, everything you've built to protect yourself falls apart." "Yes." "If I stay, I might die." "Not if I have anything to say about it." Minjun's hand found hers. "I can protect you, Amara. I have resources, power, people loyal to me. I can keep you safe." "Can you?" Amara pulled her hand away gently. "Or are you just telling yourself that because you want it to be true?" Minjun flinched as if she'd struck him. "I've watched people I love die," Amara continued, her voice shaking. "My father left because he couldn't handle the pressure. My brother is fighting cancer. And every single day, I'm terrified I'm going to lose him. I came here to save one life. I can't become the reason someone else dies. Including you." "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying that maybe Jae-sung is right. Maybe the smart thing, the safe thing, is for me to take the money and go home and let you go back to being untouchable." "The safe thing," Minjun repeated, his voice hollow. "Is that what you want?" Amara looked at him. This powerful, terrifying, heartbreakingly lonely man who'd somehow become the most important person in her world in less than 30 days. "No," she whispered. "But it's what you need." Minjun closed his eyes. When he opened them again they were filled with something that looked like agony. "Then I'll let you go," he said quietly. "On day 30 I'll give you triple what we agreed on. Enough to cover your brother's treatment for the next 2 years. I'll arrange safe passage home. And I'll make sure no one ever connects you to me." Minjun, "But tonight," he interrupted, his voice breaking, "let me pretend, just for tonight, that I'm not the monster I've become. That you could have stayed. That we could have had something real." Amara's resolve shattered. She closed the distance between them and wrapped her arms around him. Minjun went rigid, then slowly, carefully as if she might break, he held her back. They stood there in the safe room, two people clinging to something impossible, while the world waited outside to tear them apart. But there are some things even a crime lord can't protect against. Some betrayals that come from places he never thought to look. And in 48 hours, both of them would learn that the 30-day rule wasn't made to protect Minjun from caring. It was made to protect the people he cared about from the truth he'd buried so deep, he'd almost forgotten it himself. Amara woke in her own bed, alone. She'd left the safe room around 3 a.m., after Minjun had fallen asleep holding her. She'd extracted herself carefully, returned to her room, and laid awake until dawn, her mind spinning. One more day. She should have felt relieved. The job was almost over. She'd earned more than enough. Marcus would be okay. But all she felt was grief. She got up, showered, dressed in her uniform for what might be the last time. When she entered the kitchen, she found breakfast already prepared, not by her but by someone else. And there was a note. "Thought you might want a morning off. Jae-sung." Amara almost smiled. For all his warnings and severity, the man had a hidden kindness he tried hard to bury. She was drinking coffee at the kitchen counter when Minjun appeared. He looked like he hadn't slept. His shirt was wrinkled, hair disheveled. But his eyes locked onto hers immediately. "We need to talk," he said. Before Amara could respond, Jae-sung burst into the kitchen, his phone pressed to his ear, his face ashen. "Hyungnim. We have a problem." The temperature in the room dropped. What kind of problem? The kind where someone just sent a package to the front gate. Jae-sung's voice was tight. It's addressed to Amara. Amara's blood ran cold. What? Why would... Don't touch it, Minjun snapped. He turned to Jae-sung. Get the bomb squad. Now. It's not a bomb. Jae-sung's expression was grim. We already x-rayed it. It's a phone. And a note. Show me. They moved to the security office, a high-tech command center Amara had never seen. On the main screen, footage showed a small package sitting at the gate, already opened by the security team. Inside was a burner phone and a piece of paper. Jae-sung read the note aloud. Call this number at noon. Alone. Or everyone you love dies. A friend. Amara's hands shook. I don't understand. Who would? Me, a voice said from the doorway. Everyone turned. A woman stood there, elegant, beautiful, Korean in her early 30s. She wore a designer suit and smiled like a knife edge. Minjun went rigid. Eugene. Hello, Appa, the woman said sweetly. Miss me? Eugene Kong. Minjun's half-sister. The daughter his father had with his second wife after Minjun's mother died. The one person who knew every secret. Every weakness. Every buried truth about the 30-day rule. And the one person Minjun had trusted enough to let inside his fortress. The room exploded into chaos. Jae-sung's gun was drawn in an instant, aimed at Eugene. Security personnel flooded in, weapons raised. But Eugene just laughed. Put the guns away, boys. I'm not here to kill anyone. Yet. How did you get in? Minjun's voice was deathly quiet. Oh, Appa. I've had access codes to this house since father died. Did you really think I wouldn't keep a back door open? Eugene walked calmly to the coffee maker, poured herself a cup. You've gotten predictable. The great Ghost of Gangnam, brought down by a pretty face and a bleeding heart. She turned to Amara, her smile widening. Hello, Amara. I've heard so much about you. Well, actually, I've seen so much. The cameras in this house. Half of them feed to me too. Amara felt sick. What do you want? Minjun said. What? I want what's rightfully mine. Eugene's smile disappeared. Father left everything to you. The business, the money, the power. And what did I get? A trust fund and a pat on the head. As if I wasn't every bit as capable, as ruthless, as worthy. You're not, Minjun said flatly. You're sloppy. Emotional. You'd have destroyed everything father built within a year. Maybe. Eugene shrugged. But we'll never know, will we? Because Big Brother took it all. And then made it impossible for anyone to challenge him by becoming the untouchable ghost. No weaknesses. No attachments. Nothing to leverage. She looked at Amara. Until her. If you hurt her, Minjun started. You'll what? Kill me? Your own sister? Eugene laughed. That's exactly what I'm counting on. Because the moment you kill me, you prove to all our allies, all our partners, all the families we work with that you're exactly the monster everyone thinks you are. And they'll turn on you like wolves. So what's your play? Jae-sung demanded. Simple. Eugene pulled out her own phone. At noon, Amara will call that number. She'll walk out of this mansion. She'll get in a car I've arranged. And she'll disappear. You'll never see her again. But she'll be alive. Safe. As long as you behave. And if he doesn't? Amara found her voice, though it shook. Then I send the video footage of you and Minjun to every news outlet in Seoul. Your faces. Your conversations. Your little romantic moment in the safe room last night. Yes, I saw that too. And the moment the world knows the Ghost of Gangnam has fallen in love with his maid, every enemy he's ever made will hunt you down and use you to destroy him. Eugene's eyes glittered with malice. Father taught us both the same lesson, Appa. Love is weakness. And weakness gets you killed. Minjun's face was a mask of stone, but Amara could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. What's your price? He asked quietly. 40% of the business. Equal partnership. And you step back from operations. Let me run things. That's suicide. You don't have the experience? Then I guess you'll have to teach me. Or watch your girlfriend die. Eugene checked her watch. You have 3 hours to decide. Tick-tock, Appa. She walked out, leaving a vacuum of tension in her wake. The trap was perfect, elegantly cruel. Because Minjun had two choices: give up everything he'd built and risk the empire falling apart under incompetent leadership, destroying thousands of lives in the process. Or sacrifice Amara to protect his world. And Eugene knew with absolute certainty, that her brother would never let an innocent woman die for his sins. It was the one piece of their mother that still lived in him. And it was going to destroy him. After Eugene left, Minjun locked himself in his study. Amara followed, ignoring Jae-sung's protests. She found Minjun standing at his window, staring out at the snow-covered grounds. "I need to know the truth," she said. "All of it. Why do maids really never last past 30 days? Minjun didn't turn around. "You should go. Pack your things." "I'll arrange, Minjun." Amara's voice was steel. "Tell me." A long silence. Then, "My father created the rule," Minjun said quietly. "After my mother died. He brought in a new maid, someone to take care of me, to help run the house. She was kind, patient, everything my mother had been. And I got attached." He finally turned to face her, and his eyes were haunted. "For 2 months she was there. And I started to heal. Started to feel normal again. And then one day my father's enemy sent her back to us. In pieces. With a note that said, 'This is what happens when you care.'" Amara's hand flew to her mouth. "My father went insane with rage. He killed everyone responsible. Burned their operations to the ground. And when it was over, when the ashes had settled, he made a new rule. No one stays longer than 30 days. Not long enough to become real. Not long enough to matter." "But some of them didn't quit," Amara whispered, remembering Jae-sung's words. "Some of them disappeared." Minjun's face twisted with something like shame. "Some of them figured things out. Saw too much. Asked too many questions. And my father, he couldn't risk loose ends." "Did you?" "No." Minjun's voice was fierce. "I never hurt any of them. But I didn't stop my father either. And when I took over, I kept the rule. Told myself it was for their protection. But really I was just afraid. Afraid of becoming my father. Afraid of caring enough to destroy someone else." He crossed the room, stood before her. "And then you walked into my house with your courage and your kindness and your refusal to be invisible. And I broke the one rule that kept me human." "What rule?" "I let myself hope." Tears streamed down Amara's face. "What do we do?" "I give Eugene what she wants. And I let you go." "No." Amara grabbed his arms. "There has to be another way." "There isn't." Minjun's voice broke. "She's right. The moment you became important to me, your life was over. Every enemy I have will use you. Every rival will hunt you. And he pulled her into his arms, held her like she was the last solid thing in a dissolving world. "I can't watch another person I love be destroyed because of me." "Love?" Amara pulled back, staring at him. Minjun cupped her face, his thumb brushing away her tears. "I love you. I've probably loved you since day 13, when you told me my piano playing sounded like music breaking and healing at the same time. And that's why you have to leave. And if I don't want to? Then I'll make you." Minjun's voice turned cold, distant, the ghost returning. "I'll pay you off. Put you on a plane. And I'll never contact you again. You'll go home, save your brother, and live your life. And I'll go back to being what I was always meant to be. Alone." Before Amara could respond, an explosion rocked the mansion. Eugene had lied. She'd said 3 hours. But she'd only given them 1. Because the real play wasn't blackmail. It was war. And the battle for Kang Minjun's soul was about to become very, very bloody. The explosion came from the East Wing, a tactical strike, precise and devastating. Alarms screamed. Security protocols activated. Jae-sung's voice barked orders through the intercom. "We're under attack. Multiple hostiles breaching the perimeter. This is not a drill." Minjun's transformation was instantaneous. The vulnerable man who'd been holding her vanished, replaced by something colder, deadlier. He grabbed Amara's wrist. "Come with me. Now." They ran through the mansion, not toward the safe room, but toward the armory Amara didn't know existed. Minjun punched in codes, pulled open a concealed door, and revealed a room filled with enough weapons to outfit a small army. He tossed her a bulletproof vest. "Put this on." "I don't know how to. I'll teach you later. If we survive." Minjun armed himself with brutal efficiency, gun, knife, extra magazines. He pressed a panic button on the wall. "That alerts our allies. But it'll take them 20 minutes to get here." Another explosion. Closer this time. "How many?" Minjun spoke into his radio. "At least 15 hostiles," Jae-sung responded, his voice tight. "Professional. Well armed. They're not trying to kill us. They're trying to breach the inner sanctum. They're after something specific." Minjun's eyes met Amara's. "They're after you." "But Eugene said." "Eugene lied." Minjun's voice was grim. "This isn't her play. Someone else is using her as a distraction." The realization hit Amara like ice water. The Kobe family. Smart girl. Minjun handed her a phone, a special one encrypted. If I die, you press this button. It'll connect you to someone who will get you out of Korea. His name is Kim Taeyong. He owes me a life debt. Tell him the ghost sent you. I'm not leaving you. Yes, you are. Minjun kissed her, hard, desperate, final. Because you're the only good thing I've done in 15 years. And I'll be damned if I let them take that away from me. He pulled away, checked his weapon, and moved toward the door. Minjun. He stopped, looked back. Don't die, Amara whispered. His smile was sad. I'll try. The mansion became a war zone. And Kang Minjun, the ghost of Gangnam, the untouchable crime lord, the man who'd spent 15 years building walls around his heart, went to war for the one person who'd managed to climb over them. The gunfire was deafening. Amara crouched in the armory, the vest heavy on her chest, Minjun's phone clutched in her shaking hands. Through the open door, she could hear shouting in Korean and Japanese, the sharp crack of gunshots, the controlled chaos of a battle happening in real time. Her phone, her personal phone, buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Unknown, walk out the front door. Hands up. Do it now and Minjun lives. Refuse and we kill everyone in the mansion. You have 60 seconds. Amara's heart stopped. She looked at the panic phone Minjun had given her. Then at her own phone. 60 seconds. She thought about Marcus. About her mother. About the life she'd built from nothing. And then she thought about Minjun, the way he'd held her in the safe room, the way he'd called her name like a prayer, the way he'd looked at her like she was the only real thing in a world of shadows. I love you, he'd said. And God help her, she loved him too. Amara stood up. She walked out of the armory, through the mansion, stepping over broken glass and bullet-scarred walls. Security personnel tried to stop her, but she pushed past them. What are you doing? Jae-sung grabbed her arm. Saving all of you, Amara said calmly. Tell Minjun I'm sorry. She pulled free and walked toward the front door. Amara opened the front door. Snow fell softly, peaceful against the violence. A line of armed men waited at the bottom of the steps, professionals wearing tactical gear, weapons trained on the house. And in the center, Eugene stood beside a man Amara didn't recognize. Older, Japanese, his face scarred and cruel. Smart girl, Eugene called out. Come down here. Slowly. Amara descended the steps, hands raised. Who are you? She asked the man. Tanaka Kenji, he said in accented English. Kobayashi family. Your boyfriend killed my brother last year. Messy business. And now I'm going to kill the one thing he loves. Fair trade, yes? Terror flooded through Amara, but she kept her voice steady. Then you're a fool. Tanaka's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? If you kill me, Minjun will never stop hunting you. He'll tear your entire organization apart. He'll kill everyone you love. Everyone you've ever spoken to. He'll burn your empire to the ground and dance in the ashes. And he'll do it slowly over years until you're begging for death. Tanaka smiled. Maybe. But I'll still have the satisfaction of watching him suffer first. He raised his gun. No. Eugene stepped forward, her face pale. That wasn't the deal. You said you'd use her as leverage, not... Plans change, Tanaka said coldly. The gunshot rang out. But it wasn't Tanaka's weapon. Eugene gasped, looking down at the blood blooming across her chest. Tanaka had shot her. Collateral damage, he said simply, letting her body fall into the snow. And that's when hell arrived. Minjun had been watching from the shadows. Waiting for his moment. And the moment Tanaka revealed his true intentions, the ghost of Gangnam stopped being human and became something else entirely. Something that would haunt Tanaka's nightmares for the rest of his very short life. It happened too fast for Amara to process. One moment, Tanaka was raising his gun toward her. The next, a gunshot cracked from the rooftop, and the man beside Tanaka dropped, a perfect headshot. Chaos erupted. Minjun came from nowhere and everywhere at once. A shadow with a gun, moving through Tanaka's men like death itself. Each shot was precise, calculated, lethal. No wasted movement. No hesitation. Jae-sung and the security team poured from the mansion, engaging the remaining hostiles. Amara dropped to the ground, covering her head as bullets flew overhead. And then strong hands grabbed her, pulled her behind a concrete pillar. Minjun. His face was splattered with blood, not his own. His eyes were wild, feral, barely human. Are you hurt? He demanded. No, I'm Minjun Eugene. I know. His voice was cold. She made her choice. He turned back to the battle, raised his weapon and fired twice. 2 more of Tanaka's men fell. The firefight lasted less than 5 minutes. When the smoke cleared, Tanaka's entire team was dead or incapacitated. The snow was stained red. And Tanaka himself knelt in the courtyard, wounded, surrounded by Minjun's men. Minjun walked toward him slowly, deliberately, his gun hanging loose in his hand. "You killed my sister," he said quietly. "She was weak." Tanaka spat blood. "Like you. Love makes men weak." Minjun crouched down, his face inches from Tanaka's. "You're right. Love does make men weak. It makes them hesitate, second guess, show mercy." He pressed the gun against Tanaka's forehead. "But I don't love you." The gunshot was execution style. Final. Amara watched from behind the pillar, her whole body shaking. She'd never seen violence like this, raw, personal, absolute. And when Minjun turned around, his eyes found hers across the blood-soaked courtyard. For a long moment they just stared at each other. Then Minjun's expression crumbled. The ghost disappeared and he was just a man again, broken, exhausted, covered in the consequences of his choices. He dropped the gun and walked toward her. "I'm sorry," he said hoarsely. "I'm so sorry you had to see that you got dragged into this. Amara launched herself at him, wrapping her arms around him so tightly she could barely breathe. "Shut up," she sobbed into his shoulder. "Just shut up and hold me." He did. They stood there in the snow, surrounded by death and destruction, 2 survivors clinging to each other while sirens wailed in the distance. The battle was over. But the war, the real war, was just beginning. Because Minjun had to make a choice. And this time there would be no going back. The cleanup took hours. By the time the sun set, Tanaka's bodies had been removed, the blood washed away, and the mansion sealed off while investigators, the ones Minjun owned, processed the scene. Eugene's body lay in the entrance hall, covered by a white sheet. Minjun had stood over her for 10 minutes, silent, before walking away without a word. Now they sat in the safe room, the one place the world couldn't reach. Amara had showered, changed into clean clothes Minjun had provided. But she still felt the weight of the day pressing down on her like stones. Minjun sat across from her, elbows on his knees, staring at nothing. "Tell me what you're thinking," Amara said softly. "I'm thinking that you should have run," Minjun replied. His voice was raw. "When you had the chance. You should have saved yourself. And let you die? I've been dying for 15 years. At least it would have meant something." Amara moved to sit beside him. She took his hand, still stained with gunpowder residue despite the shower he'd taken. "My turn to tell you a truth," she said. "When I was 7 years old, after my father left, my mom had a breakdown. For 3 months I was the adult. I made meals for Marcus, got him to school, paid bills with money I didn't understand. And I was terrified every single day that someone would notice and take us away." She squeezed his hand. "But I survived. And Marcus survived. And my mom got better. And I learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to run when everything tells you to." Minjun looked at her, his eyes red-rimmed. "You don't know what you're signing up for." "Then tell me. All of it. The truth about your empire, your enemies, what staying past day 30 really means. Tell me everything and let me choose." So he did. For the next hour, Minjun laid bare the reality of his world. The drug routes. The money laundering. The protection rackets. The violence that kept his empire functioning. The enemies who would never stop coming. The price of power measured in blood and betrayal. He told her about the families he'd destroyed. The lives he'd taken. The line between businessman and monster that he'd crossed so long ago he couldn't remember where it had been. And when he was done, he looked at her with exhausted eyes and said, "That's who I am. That's what you'd be choosing. And I'm asking you, begging you, to walk away. Because you're good, Amara. You're the best thing I've ever touched. And I can't watch this world destroy you the way it destroyed everyone else I've ever cared about." Amara was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "What if you walked away instead?" Minjun blinked. "What? You have money, resources, power. What if you just left, sold the business, disappeared, started over somewhere else?" "It doesn't work like that. You can't just retire from what I do." "Why not?" "Because there are people who depend on me. Legitimate businesses I've built that employ thousands. Families whose livelihoods are tied to my empire. If I walk away, vultures like Tanaka will tear it apart. And all those people, the ones who had nothing to do with the criminal side, they'll suffer. Then don't walk away from everything. Walk away from the criminal parts. Keep the legitimate businesses. Transition out of the underground empire." Minjun laughed bitterly. That would take years. Maybe a decade. And every step of the way people would try to stop me. Kill me. Use you against me. So we spend a decade being careful. Amara turned to face him fully. Minjun, I didn't come to Korea to fall in love with a crime lord. But I also didn't come here to watch someone I love destroy himself because he thinks he doesn't deserve a second chance. I don't deserve, maybe not. But Marcus didn't deserve leukemia either. And my mom didn't deserve to raise 2 kids alone. And I didn't deserve to have to choose between my education and my brother's life. The world isn't fair. We don't get what we deserve. We get what we fight for. She cupped his face, forcing him to look at her. So I'm asking you, what are you willing to fight for? Your empire? Or something real? It was the question that had been waiting 15 years to be asked. And Kang Minjun, who had built an empire on ruthless certainty, who had never hesitated, never doubted, found himself at a crossroads he'd never imagined existed. Because for the first time in his life he wanted something more than power. He wanted peace. 3 days later Minjun called a meeting. Not in the mansion, that was still being repaired. But in a private club in Gangnam, the kind of place where Seoul's elite conducted business over whiskey and secrets. Every major player in Minjun's organization was there. Under bosses, financial advisors, lawyers, enforcers. Jae-sung stood at Minjun's right hand, his expression unreadable. And in the back of the room, watching from the shadows, Amara sat wearing a simple black dress, her presence a statement no one could miss. Minjun stood at the head of the table, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, every inch the Ghost of Gangnam. 15 years ago, he began, his voice carrying through the room, my father gave me an empire built on blood and fear. And I took it, expanded it, made it untouchable. We became the most powerful organization in Seoul because we were willing to do what others weren't. We survived because we showed no weakness. He paused, letting the words settle. But survival isn't the same as living. And power isn't the same as strength. Murmurs rippled through the room. 3 days ago we were attacked. My sister betrayed us. And people died. Minjun's voice hardened. That attack revealed something I've known for a long time but refused to admit. This life has an expiration date. Eventually, someone faster, meaner, hungrier comes along. And when they do, all that power means nothing. He looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes. So I'm making changes. Over the next 2 years, we're transitioning out of every illegal operation. Drug distribution ends. Protection rackets end. Gambling dens sold to legitimate casino operators. Money laundering operations shut down. We keep the real estate, the tech investments, the clean businesses that actually create value. The room exploded into protests. Hyungnim, you can't be serious. That's suicide. Our competitors will lose billions. Enough. Minjun's voice cracked like a whip. Silence fell. This isn't a negotiation. It's happening. Anyone who wants out can leave now with a generous severance package. Anyone who stays understands that we're building something different. Something that lasts. An older man, Kim Sang-woo, one of the original members of Minjun's father's organization, stood slowly. With respect, Hyungnim, your father would be ashamed. Minjun's smile was cold. My father died alone in a hospital room, surrounded by guards, terrified that someone would kill him even on his deathbed. If that's honor, I don't want it. He gestured to Amara. That woman in the back, the one who survived an assassination attempt because of my choices, she asked me what I was willing to fight for. And I realized I've spent 15 years fighting for an empire that will disappear the moment I'm gone. I want to fight for something that matters. Kim Sang-woo studied Minjun for a long moment. Then slowly he sat down. Your father was a great man. But you might become something rarer. A good one. I'll stay. One by one, the others nodded their agreement. Not all of them. Some walked out, refusing to accept the change. But most stayed. When the meeting ended, Jae-sung approached Minjun. That was either the bravest or stupidest thing you've ever done, he said quietly. Probably both. Minjun glanced at Amara, who was making her way toward them. But I'm tired of being the ghost, Jae-sung. I want to be human again. Jae-sung nodded slowly. Then, surprising both of them, he bowed, a gesture of deep respect. Then I'll help you. Whatever you need. It was the beginning of a transformation that would take years. The Ghost of Gangnam didn't disappear overnight. Ghosts rarely do. But slowly, carefully, Minjun began dismantling the empire his father had built and replacing it with something his mother might have been proud of. And through it all, one woman stood beside him, not as a weakness to be protected, but as a strength to be cherished. Exactly one day after the 30-day rule should have ended, Amara woke in a different room, not the maid's quarters, but a guest suite in the repaired east wing of the mansion. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows. The bed was enormous, comfortable. And on the nightstand someone had left breakfast and a note. Day 31. The rule is broken. Everything changes from here. Amara smiled, then got up and dressed. She found Minjun in the garden, standing in the snow, staring at a small memorial he'd erected for Eugene. Despite everything, she'd been his sister. "You're up early," he said without turning around. "So are you." Amara stood beside him. "Are you okay?" "I don't know." Minjun's voice was quiet. "She tried to kill us. But she was also the only family I had left. And I keep thinking, if I'd done things differently, if I'd been less cold, less distant, maybe she wouldn't have felt like she needed to destroy me to prove she mattered." "You can't carry that," Amara said gently. "She made her choices. And so did Tanaka." "I know. But that doesn't make it easier." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Minjun said, "I talked to a specialist in Atlanta. The best oncologist in the country. He's willing to consult on Marcus's case. Pro bono." Amara's breath caught. "Minjun, and I've arranged for your mother to have access to better insurance. She won't have to work 2 jobs anymore." He finally looked at her, his eyes vulnerable. "I know it doesn't fix what you've been through, but I want to help. If you'll let me." Tears streamed down Amara's face. "Why?" "Because you saved my life. Not just during the attack, before that. You reminded me that there's more to existence than survival. And I want to spend however long you'll give me proving that I can be the man you see when you look at me." Amara closed the distance between them and kissed him, soft, deep, full of promise. When they pulled apart, she said, "I have to go home. Marcus needs to see me. My mom needs to know I'm okay. And I need to figure out what I want my life to look like now." Minjun's face fell, but he nodded. "I understand." "But," Amara continued, her hand finding his, "I'm coming back. In 2 weeks. And when I do, we're going to figure this out together. How to build something real in the middle of all this chaos." "You're sure?" "No." Amara smiled. "I'm terrified. But I'm also sure that running away from the best thing that's ever happened to me would be the biggest mistake of my life." Minjun pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was the only solid thing in a shifting world. 2 weeks, he murmured against her hair. 2 weeks, she confirmed. She left the next morning. Flew home to Atlanta with more money than she'd ever imagined having, and a phone number she could call at any hour of the day or night. And for 14 days they talked. About everything. About nothing. About the future they were trying to build from the ashes of who they used to be. 2 weeks later, Amara Williams stepped off a plane at Incheon Airport with a single suitcase and a heart full of terrified hope. She'd spent the time back home with Marcus and her mother, watching her brother gain strength, seeing the fear leave her mother's eyes for the first time in years. She told them everything, well, most of everything. The parts they needed to know. And Marcus, wise beyond his 16 years, had said, "If he makes you happy, sis, then you should fight for that. God knows you've fought for everyone else." So here she was, fighting for something she barely understood but couldn't let go. Minjun waited at arrivals, standing out among the crowd despite his attempt at casual dress. Jeans, a simple black coat, a baseball cap pulled low. But nothing could hide the way he moved, the authority in his posture. When he saw her, his face transformed. Not the ghost. Not the crime lord. Just a man seeing someone he loved. They met in the middle of the terminal, and he pulled her into his arms without a word. "Welcome back," he murmured. "It's good to be back." Amara pulled away just enough to look at him. "How's the transition going?" "Slowly. Painfully. I've already survived 2 assassination attempts from people who don't appreciate the new direction." He said it so casually that Amara's heart stopped. "Minjun, I'm fine. Jae-sung is earning his salary." Minjun smiled, but there was steel beneath it. "This was never going to be easy. But I made a promise to you and to myself. I'm keeping it." They left the airport, drove back toward Seoul as the sun set over the city. But they didn't go to the mansion. Instead, Minjun took her to a different building, a modern apartment in Hanamdong with a view of the Han River. "What is this?" Amara asked. "Yours. If you want it." Minjun unlocked the door, led her inside. The space was beautiful. Open floor plan, floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture. "I know the mansion has bad memories, and I thought you might want somewhere that's just yours. No history. No ghosts. Just a place to breathe." Amara turned to him, stunned. "You bought me an apartment?" Technically it's in a trust under your name. You own it outright. If you decide to leave, his voice caught. If this doesn't work out, you'll always have somewhere safe to land. Minjun. Amara's voice broke. No one has ever. You deserve to be taken care of. Minjun stepped closer, his hands gentle on her face. You've spent your whole life taking care of everyone else. Let me take care of you. Please. She kissed him then, pouring everything she couldn't say into the contact. Gratitude, fear, hope, love. When they broke apart, both breathless, Amara said, I want to work. Minjun blinked. What? I can't just be kept. I need purpose. Something that's mine. She took his hand. Help me find a job. Something legitimate. Maybe teaching English or working with international students. Something that matters. A slow smile spread across Minjun's face, the first real smile she'd seen from him. Okay. We'll find you something that matters. And so they began. Not a fairy tale. Not a perfect happily ever after. But something real, messy and complicated and beautiful. Two broken people learning to heal together, building a life from the wreckage of the ones they'd left behind. 6 months later, the piano music drifted through the apartment at 2 a.m. Amara woke to the sound, smiled and got out of bed. She found Minjun at the piano he'd had installed in the living room. A gift to himself, he'd said, though she suspected it was really a gift to both of them. He played Chopin as always. But this time the melody was gentler. Less melancholic. She sat beside him on the bench, resting her head on his shoulder. Couldn't sleep? She asked. Had a meeting with the prosecutors today. They're closing the investigation into the Tanaka incident. Self-defense, clear-cut. Minjun's hands stilled on the keys. That's the last of the criminal cases. Everything else is just corporate law now. How does it feel? Strange. Like I'm becoming someone I don't recognize. He looked at her. Is that a good thing? I think so. Amara smiled. The man I met 6 months ago was terrifying and lonely and convinced he didn't deserve happiness. The man I'm looking at now is still terrifying, but he's learning. Growing. And he plays piano at 2 a.m. because he wants to, not because he's haunted. Minjun kissed the top of her head. How's Marcus doing? Good. The doctors say he's in remission. They want to keep monitoring him, but, her voice caught with emotion. He's going to be okay, Minjun. He's going to live. Because of you. Because of us. Amara laced her fingers through his. I couldn't have saved him without you. And you couldn't have saved yourself without me. We're a team. A team. Minjun tested the word like it was foreign. Then smiled. I like that. They sat there in comfortable silence, watching the city lights reflect off the Han River. Then Minjun said carefully, I have something I need to ask you. Amara's heart jumped. Okay. He didn't get down on one knee. Didn't pull out a ring. Just turned to face her, his expression open and vulnerable in a way that still took her breath away. I know it's too soon. I know we're still figuring this out. But I need you to know. He took her hands. I'm not going anywhere. Whether it takes a year or 10 years or a lifetime, I want to build something with you. Something that matters. And when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I want to make it official. Tears streamed down Amara's face. Are you proposing? I'm declaring intent. Minjun's smile was soft. Consider this your warning. One day, probably when you least expect it, I'm going to ask you to marry me. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure you say yes. Amara laughed through her tears. That's the most Minjun proposal not proposal I've ever heard. Is that a complaint? No. She kissed him soft and sweet. It's perfect. And in that moment, in a Seoul apartment overlooking the river, two people who should never have met found something neither of them had been looking for. Home. Not a place. Not a mansion or a country or a city. But the feeling of being known, completely and entirely, by another human being. And choosing to stay anyway. The wedding was small. Just close friends, Jae-sung as best man, Chloe as maid of honor. Marcus, healthy, thriving, about to start college, walked Amara down the aisle since their father wasn't there to do it. Her mother cried happy tears. They held the ceremony not in Seoul but in Jeju Island, far from the city, far from the ghosts. Minjun wore a traditional Korean hanbok, black with silver embroidery. Amara wore white, a fusion of Western and Korean styles that made her feel like herself. Not a maid, not a trophy, but a bride. When they said their vows, Minjun's voice was steady. I promise to never stop fighting for us. To never take you for granted. To remember that love isn't weakness, it's the only thing that ever made me strong. Amara's voice trembled but held. I promise to see you, all of you, the ghost and the man. To remind you that you're worthy of happiness. And to never, ever quit on us. Even when it's hard. Even when it's scary. Especially then. They sealed it with a kiss that tasted like hope. At the reception, Jae-sung raised a glass to the ghost of Gangnam, who finally learned that the scariest thing he could do was let someone love him. And to Amara, who was brave enough to love him back. Later, when they were alone on the beach watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink, Amara said, "Do you ever regret it? Giving up the empire?" Minjun pulled her close. "Every day I wake up next to you instead of in that empty mansion, surrounded by people who feared me? No, I don't regret a single thing. Even the 30-day rule?" He smiled. "Especially that. Because you broke it. And in breaking it you broke me open. Made me human again." Amara rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, steady, alive, real. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now." Minjun's voice was warm. "Now we live. Really live. Build a life that's ours. Maybe travel. Maybe have kids someday. Maybe just exist together and figure out how to be happy." "Sounds boring." "Good." Minjun kissed the top of her head. "I've had enough excitement for one lifetime. Boring sounds perfect." And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting their future in light and shadow, Amara Williams, now Amara Kong, realized something profound. She'd come to Seoul to save one life. Instead, she'd save two. The ghost of Gangnam became a man. The maid became a wife. And the 30-day rule that was meant to keep them apart became the beginning of a love story that would last a lifetime. Because sometimes the best things in life aren't planned. They're not safe. They're not predictable. They're just two people against all odds choosing each other. Every single day. Even when it's terrifying. Especially then. Love doesn't make you weak. Fear of love does. And the bravest thing any of us can do is risk everything for the one person who makes us feel alive.